everybody, welcome back to Be My Cook. Are you struggling to make an apple pie and just don't know how? Or you know how, but it just never turns out right? Well, I have a great recipe for you today with a nice flaky crust, and I'm going to show you how to make the best apple pie. So just keep watching. So in this bowl, I have 2 cups of all-purpose flour. Now when you're going to use flour for any kind of baking, make sure that you get a new bag of flour or your flour's not that old, because it won't turn out if you have old flour sitting in your cabinet for 3 or 4 years. Okay, and then when you get your flour out of a new bag, fluff it up a little bit with your measuring cup like this in the bag. Get some air into it. Okay, now to this 2 cups of all-purpose flour, I'm going to add a half a teaspoon of salt. We're just going to mix this around. Now I've been making pies all morning, so if you see any kind of mess around, it's because I've already made a few. All right, now to this mixture, I'm going to add some vegetable shortening. Crisco is the one that I use. It is 2/3 of a cup plus 2 tablespoons, okay? All right. Now to this, I'm going to use my pastry cutter, and we're going to use this and incorporate the shortening in the flour. This is the same crust I've been making for over 40 years. I have not changed and used a crust with butter. I find that I don't like the taste, and to me it seems a little bit tough for the crust. Kind of tastes like a little bit burnt, and they do burn sometimes. But if you're going to make a pie, I would suggest not to use those pie crust already made in the grocery store in the package. Those always tend to burn and have a weird taste to them, so I never use them. This recipe is so easy, you can make this if you've never made a pie before. It's very easy. So far there's really nothing to this, right? You're just mixing salt and flour with shortening, so it's no big deal. So let's keep incorporating this by spinning the bowl, moving our pastry cutter around. The better you absorb the shortening in the flour now before we add the water, the better your crust is going to be. So when these pieces get a little bit bigger, as you can see they are, that's a good time to add the water. This is a 1/4 cup of cold water. We're going to incorporate that. It's going to get a little bit harder to move around the bowl. I've always made pies like this. I don't put them in the food processor. I see a lot of people using that. For dough, I suppose you could do that. I don't do that because I like to be able to feel the pastry and know if it's good or bad. That's how I tell. That's how I've done it. All right, let's kind of gather this into one big ball if we can. It has to have a sticky texture to it. If it doesn't, then something's gone wrong, because you'll never be able to put it in a ball or roll it out, because it's just going to be a disaster. It'll be too dry. And I have a tip for you too, that when you start to roll this out, don't use too much flour. Just use enough to get it to not stick. But if you use too much flour, you're going to dry out your dough, and it's going to start cracking, and it's going to be miserable. All right, so you see how this is? It's still tacky enough, but it's not sticky. But this is what we want. So now we're just going to cut this in half, because this is for a 2-crust 9-inch pie. And I just kind of weigh it on my hands, and it seems pretty even. One for the bottom, one for the top, and I have one of these mats. It's pretty good to have a mat if you have a table like mine that is not marble. This keeps your pie from sticking. It's really worth it. I think they're only about maybe $7, $8. I bought mine on Amazon, might be $10. They're just called a pastry mat. So I want to kind of spread this out a little bit, put it in a disc. We're going to wrap it in cling wrap, plastic wrap, and we're going to set it in the refrigerator for at least 30 minutes. You really do need to do that. So adjust your time for this to start to rest, okay? And I'm going to do the other one, and then I'll be right back and we're going to make the filling. I have 6 Granny Smith apples here. This one I would say would be a large, and this is basically a medium. So I'm going to try to use all of these. I'm pretty sure I'll probably use all of them for a 9-inch pie. So what I want to show you is I'm just cutting them about this thick. You don't want to cut it any thicker than that because they're not going to get done. Okay, so I just kind of give them a nice slice, just like that, and in they go. I just want to tell you that if you are using a cutting board like I am, and you use that cutting board all the time for onions and garlic and all kinds of vegetables, and you wash it off, put a mat on the top of it just in case, because sometimes those things still get into the wood and you don't want your apples to taste like garlic, okay? So always put a mat on top first so you have a very fresh surface for your apples to be when you're cutting them, so there's no weird taste in your apples. And I only say that because I know someone who did that and they weren't thinking about it, and their apple pie had this very strange onion taste. Okay, so I used up all 6 apples, and this big measuring cup says there's 8 cups in here. But, you know, I've been playing with it, so it just probably looks more than what it actually is once you get it in the pie. So now I'm going to add 1 cup of sugar. Now this can make or break your pie, okay? Make sure that you taste your apples before you put the sugar on them. If they have any kind of sweet taste, you only want to add at least 1 cup of sugar. If you add more than that, this is going to be so sweet you're not going to want to eat the pie, okay? So be very careful with that. Now I'm going to add about 1/8 of a teaspoon of ground nutmeg. You don't want a lot because that's strong. We have some cinnamon here. I'm going to add about 1/2 teaspoon to start. I usually always might have to add more, but what I do is I look at the apples when I'm stirring this up, and it has to have a certain kind of look. You know, if it's too light, then I'll add more cinnamon. But once you add it, you can't take it out. So remember that, okay? So I'm just gonna stir this around, see what we get. So I wanna show you what I have here. Now I don't like the color, it's too light, so I'm gonna add some more cinnamon. And this time I'm just gonna shake it on instead of measuring. Just give it maybe 1/4 of a teaspoon, maybe not. We don't want to put too much cinnamon in here because that's also going to make the pie taste not right. Keep stirring it up. As you can see, the sugar is starting to make the apples give me a little bit of juice here, which is good. That's all flavor. All right, this is what I want. It's very subtle from the last time I showed it to you, but it does make a difference. We're going to leave this alone, and we're going to get our pie crust out of the refrigerator. Okay, let's take our bottom crust here. Put a little bit of flour on a rolling pin. I have a little bit down here, and I'm just going to move it around just like that on both sides. We want this to move just like that. Now we're going to take our rolling pin and start from the middle and go out each way, and then side to side. Try to make a circle. Now I'm not using the circle in this pastry mat, okay, because I always want my pie crust to be a little bit bigger than the pan. Just works out a little bit better. That way I have more to decorate with when I go to crimp the sides. Holds together better. There's no cracking. So just a little bit at a time, going around the sides. We don't want the bottom to be too thick. And I always try to pinch these little cracks together as I go. And I'm trying to be gentle because this is a flaky crust and we don't want to, you know, beat it up. So I'm going to continue to roll this out and then I'll show you when I get it in my 9-inch pie pan. I'm using a glass one, by the way. I never use metal. I always use glass for my pies. So here I want to show you that I made it bigger than the actual pie plate itself so that I have some hangover for when I put the top crust on and we're going to go around the sides and make it look pretty. What I like to do now is just kind of cut some of these little edges off that look like they're splitting. I mean, if it's going to split, it's going to split anyway, but this kind of helps a little bit. All right, let's get those out of the way. I'm going to take a little bit more flour, put it on our bench scraper, and kind of scoot it under the pie very gently. Try to get under there as best you can. Go all the way to the center until we can get it to move. Okay, it's moved. Now what I'm going to do is take my pie plate, get it close to me, and take this edge. We're going to roll this pie crust up on the rolling pin, move my plate closer, and then we're going to pick it up and just kind of let it roll gently over to the other side. Okay, it doesn't look perfect, but that's okay, because what we're going to do is we're going to move it around just like this. You see, you can slide it and bring it up on the edge and kind of push it in the pie plate. You don't want to leave that bubble under there because it'll just ooze itself right out of the pie dish. So make sure that you gently get rid of those air pockets. Now this is fine. Of course, it's not on the edge here, but it's okay because once I get the top crust on here, those pieces will be covered. So it's not a big deal. So now we're going to take our apples and we're going to put it in here. Yes, there's some syrup in there from the apples. We need that. We're keeping that. I'm not adding flour. We don't need to do that. Get all that sugar out of there. Now look at it. You're not going to put a pie crust over the top of that. Look at these things jetting out. We don't want that. So just kind of take your fingers and arrange it in this pie so that it's basically flat. If you don't do that, you're going to have something that mounds up like this. You cut it and everything falls. Try to cover all the holes. Doesn't have to be perfect. And we don't want to smash it down. We just want to make sure that there's nothing poking out, okay? So this is what we have so far. Now I'm going to go ahead and get the top crust. We're going to roll that out and we're going to get this pie in the oven. By the way, go ahead and put your oven at 425 degrees to preheat right now. All right, we have the top crust here now. I'm going to bring my pie plate over. And we're going to do the exact same thing. Just roll it up. If you are frustrated and this pie crust keeps cracking on you, let me tell you something. Take a knife and start making strips like this and just make a lattice over the top, okay? Don't be, so stressed out over a pie, okay? You can always, do something different. So where's my spot? Okay, I want to show you. This is the spot that doesn't have a lot of the overhang. So that's the one I want to cover first. So I'm going to take that and cover that first. Roll it over the top. Okay, it looks a little wonky, but we can still move it around. Now what I do is I'm going to pick up these two edges together, the top and the bottom crust. And I'm just gonna fold them over themselves. Fold it over, even if you don't have a lot there, you can still fold it. Sometimes we use, you know, some scraps if we need to. And just kind of put some of those on. It's totally fine. And usually by now I'm covered in flour. I don't see that happening today. Pick it up, fold it over, pinch it. Okay, I got most of that. Now we're not gonna leave it like that. Okay, that doesn't look nice. So we're gonna take our 2 fingers and we're just gonna kind of push and turn. Thumb and forefinger, push down, turn. Very easy to seal this down. There, see, looks better. Now I'm gonna add some vents here. Put in about 4 of them. Kind of give them a chance to open up there. All right, so what we're gonna do now, since we've got it done, you see, we're going to put it in the oven at 425 degrees for 15 minutes only. Then we're gonna drop the temperature down to 375 degrees and cook it for at least 30 minutes. Now, if you've never made a pie before and you don't know if it's done, put a fork down in between one of these vents, okay? And if the apples are soft, it's done, all right? We're not gonna put foil on the edges. We don't need to do that. What I usually do in the bottom of my oven, the rack underneath where I'm gonna put this one, I put a piece of foil under there in case any of those juices bubble out, because they will. I don't use a tray underneath there because it kind of keeps it cooking a little bit longer than it needs to because it's not actually getting all the heat. So this is going to turn out beautiful. It's going to be golden and it's going to be delicious. So I'll be back to show you the cooked pie. So here is our easy homemade apple pie. I hope you can see how delicious this looks. It's a nice flaky crust. And this pie is also beginner friendly. I'm going to slice some for you. So now I want to add some caramel sauce. This is homemade caramel sauce. I'll leave the recipe in the description box. And we're just going to drizzle some of that over the top of our apple pie. This is so delicious, guys. I hope that you make it. I hope that you love this recipe. So if you do, please give this video a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.